America in our nation's capital. This is the news with Rick Sanchez.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rick Sanchez, and I want to welcome all of you who are watching from all over the world, including those of you who are watching on your phones on the portable TV app. There are two big pieces of news that are happening as we speak. Now, why in the world the U.S. media in general is ignoring these stories, it's kind of tough to reconcile. This weekend, China made it official. It is moving forward, indeed, with a $400 billion deal with Iran. What's the deal? Well, it goes something like this. China will pump $400 billion into the flailing Iranian economy. And for the next 25 years, Iran will pump a steady stream of oil into the Chinese economy. That's the deal. Why is China doing a deal with Iran? Because it is making good, it says, on its promise to Iran based on the nuclear agreement both countries signed back in 2015. You remember that? Yeah, it's the same deal that the United States backed out of. President Biden now says he wants a new deal with Iran, but China is telling Mr. Biden, no, you can't sign a treaty and then back out and start over again. You have to honor your commitment, sir. So even if you won't, we will. That's China's talking point. That's their perspective for why they're doing this, right? So the United States perspective seems to be that China is becoming obstinate and dangerous and may need to be put in its place. So here's what the United States is going to be doing. The U.S. is announcing war games. Here's some of the video or some of the pictures or images of these said war games that the United States has from time to time. It'll carry out these war games this summer to try and prepare for the eventuality of a war with China, while also having to fight, possibly at the same time, other countries around the world, including Russia. The Pentagon says these war games or military exercises are being designed to equip the U.S. military's top leaders on how to react to a fictional global crisis erupting on multiple fronts and how to move all the military pieces around, like the bombers and the aircraft carriers. But you know, there's something else here that at least I noted this as I was doing my research on this assignment, that there's something else in this report that kind of caught my eye as we look at these images of these war games. And maybe it's going to raise questions for you as well. The Pentagon also notes that these military exercises you see behind me are going to be used to set the future military budget of the United States. Ask yourself this question. Do you think when all is said and done after these war games, they will ask for less? Maybe, in fact, a better question is, have they ever asked for less? Let's get into this here on the News with Rick Sanchez, where we always say and truly believe it's time to do news again, by golly.
When the only constant in life is change, you need to be ready. This is the Man-Made Survival Show.
Welcome back, everybody. My name is Jose Prado, Man-Made Survival, and I'm so glad you're here with me today, because today we're going to continue our talk about the possibility of going to war. So the first video that I made, it was about Russia and everything that is going on with Ukraine, NATO, United States, and everything else. And now we're going to be talking about the Chinese aspect of all of this, because it's really important that we talk about that too. Because we can only wonder how many wars can the United States fight successfully and not get our butts kicked. Because, you know, we can only be spread so thin before we're not effective anymore. So if we're going to have a major war with Russia and China, are we really going to be able to defend Israel and others? That's what we're going to be talking about here today. And I'm going to be bringing you some points that I haven't heard anybody else talk about, which, you know, that's what I see from the deal between Iran and China. As you saw in the introduction of this video, you know, it went into detail about the the deal between Iran and China, and also the war games that are being prepared to be done here in the next few weeks. So that is the reason why I believe it's important that we not only look at what happened with or is happening with Russia and the Ukraine, but also now with Iran, Israel, China, and the United States. Okay, but before I get into that podcast, I want to read to you the several headlines that have come out in the past several hours, because it shows just how quickly things are escalating between Russia and Ukraine. Okay, first, a few hours ago now, or technically, a day or two, the troops that were allegedly, the number of troops that were being reported, it stayed something below 5,000. And when I looked at that, it didn't really make sense to me that that small amount of soldiers would be what the Western media would call a ramp up or aggression, the Russian aggression. But now that this headline has come out from the Daily Star, it puts things into a more serious perspective, because at what point can war break out between Ukraine and Russia? So just giving you the headlines, I'm not going to get into it because, that is not Russia is not the subject today, it's China. But as I mentioned a second ago, you need to hear these headlines. Russia, Ukraine, days from war as Vladimir Putin puts 100,000 troops on border. The other headline that I have for you is from The Sun. Beginning of the end. Fears Russia-Ukraine war could erupt in days, with UK on high alert as US flies nukes bombers nearby. And the last headline that I have for you is this. US destroyer Roosevelt Donald Cook to enter Black Sea next week. That's from TASS.com. And, that's just so you can get an idea of how everything has escalated. Because first, what the United States did, and, I mentioned it in the previous podcast, and if you haven't listened to it, I encourage you to go back and listen to it. The first video, we talked about how the United States allegedly sent, a big amount of hardware, something like 350 tons of hardware, Humvees, missiles, guns, other soldiers. I can't remember their name right now. But anyways, the point is that we sent that. And now we're seeing that Russia is increasing their missiles, increasing their amount of soldiers there. I mean, 100,000, that's a pretty good number, especially if you're trying to fight off an invasion force. They're putting their S-500 on, right there in the scene. And, I know that they are flying drones and everything like that, so they can kind of get an idea what's happening around the border. So everything is escalating. Now, this first headline that I have for you is really important, because I have said here in the past many, many times that the relationship between Russia and China is increasing. They have been working together for several decades now on how to bring down the United States. And as a lot of the defectors have come out and told the American people what the plans were, many people at first listened, in those years. But since it has been a long time since they gave that message, for one, a lot of people don't know it. A lot of the younger generation does not know anything that these defectors have said. But for the older people, it's something that is far in their distant memory. Because even though they were alerted when they first ran out of, the defectors ran out of their country to tell the American people what Russia and China were planning, now that nothing has happened, life has continued and everyone has forgotten about it. But I have seen how Russia and China have come together, and they are actually working together to have the dollar, crumble, to have the United States military undermined. And they have done a bunch of other things that would really, if the United States has not opened its eyes to it yet, it's kind of too late now. So again, that's what we're going to be continuing talking about here in just a second. Now, this headline is from Zero Hedge, and it reads, Escobar, U.S. NATO versus Russia-China in hybrid war to the finish. What happened in the past few days between Anchorage and Julian continues to reverberate, as Russia Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov stressed that Brussels destroyed the relationship between Russia and the EU, he focused on how the Russia-China Comprehensive Strategic Partnership is getting stronger and stronger. Lavrov made it quite clear the core of Russia-China revolves around establishing an economic and financial axis to counterpunch the Bretton Woods arrangement. That implies doing everything to protect Moscow and Beijing from threats of sanctions by other states, progressive de-dollarization, and advances in cryptocurrency. This triple threat is what is unleashing the hegemon's unbounded fury. On a broader spectrum, the Russia-China strategy also implies that the progressive interaction between the Belt and Road Initiative and the Eurasia Economic Union will keep a pace across Central Asia, Southeast Asia, parts of South Asia, and Southwest Asia. Necessary steps towards an ultimately unified Eurasian market under a sort of strategic Sino-Russia management. All right, so that entire part that I put on here for the podcast for you from this article from Zero Hedge is really important because it's talking about several things. All right, so one is talking about how everything that NATO has been doing up to this point has really, destroyed any hopes for Russia to try to, give some type of olive branch, which they're not going to do anymore. All right, they have seen everything that has escalated to this point, and they have to make war plans to have a successful, or victorious outcome, at least for Russia. That's what every country wants to do when they decide to go to war. They want to be the ones that come out on top. But in this case, what they're saying is that we have tried everything that we could. NATO, the United States, and everybody else who's guilty of this, they're the ones destroying the ties. Now we have to take a defensive post and attack whenever somebody tries to attack us. So now that is not there anymore, and that has brought Russia and China together so they can work against the United States and NATO, bringing their financial institutions down, because it looks like all of this is connected and everything is going on all at the same time. So also in the article, they're talking about how for Russia and China to work against the sanctions that the United States has done on them for a very long time, they're creating an alternative economic system. All right, and the Belt and Road Initiative is a very important part of all of this. All right, so they are working to pretty much have a system where even if the United States does do sanctions on them, they're not going to care. It's not going to affect them in any way. But also they're de-dollarizing, or they're doing the de-dollarization of their economy, which is going to hurt the United States a lot. It's going to hurt a lot more that they stop using the US dollar than us putting sanctions on them. So that is why looking at something like this is really important, because that would only crash the value of the US dollar and the advances in cryptocurrency. Now, I do believe that at some point, all the cryptocurrencies that is not legal, but I guess you can say nation-backed, they're going to be banned, because they can have competition of people trying to be out of the system, especially when cryptocurrencies is a very totalitarian, heavy surveillance type of system where they know everything you ever do. So not having cash anymore, going cashless, is going to give the government absolute power in everything that you do. They're going to be able to watch everything you do with your finances, with your bank statements, and plus all these cameras that are being put everywhere now. They're going to be using those for whoever it is that, citizens who dissent and do stuff like that. I mean, we've seen everything like that come out of China. So it shouldn't really be any type of, surprise for you who has been following this type of issues in the past. All right, and now the last part of this is the Belt and Road Initiative, because China has had, the most brilliant idea for the past several decades now, which they have worked on very, very heavily, and now they have established the Belt and Road Initiative to the point where even if the United States tries to do something like it now, which they're trying to do, it's way too late. They're far behind in the game, to where they won't be able to catch up. And if China gets to a system where it doesn't matter what U.S. sanctions, there is put on them, it's not going to hurt them anymore, because now they have full control on trade throughout all the countries. And the reason that I do believe that the yuan, the digital yuan is going to replace the US dollar in the future is because of the Belt and Road Initiative. Because, I had a discussion with people in the comment section a few months ago, several months, I believe about a year now, because, I've talked about this issue when those articles came out back in those days. And they were saying, why is it such a big deal? Why is it so important for you, for me, that China is creating the Belt and Road Initiative? Wouldn't that just be an economic boost for whatever country they're doing it in? And I say, yes, it would be on the surface, but really what China is trying to do is that they're trying to take over the ports because they're indebting those nations, and if they cannot pay their debt towards China, then in the contract saying that now they own whatever they built in that country. So if China owns the ports, they own the roads, and they own all the factories that are there, and besides, they're over 1 billion people, they can very easily colonize all those countries that they have worked in, which they're doing. Then China can take over the world very, very easily, especially now when all these places will use the yuan. Since all these places, have the Belt and Road Initiative, which would be South America, all of Africa, I think parts of the Middle East, and of course Asia, and I think including Russia. So if all those places use the yuan only and they don't accept dollars, what is that going to do to the value of the US dollar? It's going to make it crumble. So that is the reason why this is important. So the Belt and Road Initiative has been the slow cancer that has ate away at the American, imperialism or at the US dollar or, our way of life. Because even though we have not seen it yet, I bet you that it's going to happen sooner rather than later. Right? And all that brings us to the next article, which I do believe is really, really important because as I'm going to be showing you in the math, and, several other things that I've been thinking about, pondering about this issue, is how the Chinese people have actually backed their digital yuan with oil, which is something that the United States did, with the US dollar backed by oil. China has done exactly the same thing, but now instead of being the physical dollar or their yuan, they're going crypto with it, which I do believe is going to make it a lot stronger than paper flying around everywhere, especially with how the purchasing power of the US dollar has decreased over, several decades now to where it's almost worthless. And it's only a matter of time with all this money printing and, all the monetary policies and everything like that that's going to continue to bring it down to the point where we're going to have hyperinflation. Everybody's going to flee the US dollar and they're all going to go into the yuan. I believe that's going to happen. I cannot tell you when it's going to happen, but I do believe it's here within the next 10 years. So again, another timeline for you to prepare for, because I do believe that once that happens, we're going to hit hyperinflation here in the United States. All right, especially if Biden starts printing a lot more money, because, at this point, 2 point whatever trillion dollars it was for the infrastructure, what's stopping them from doing another one? Or if we're just going to print trillions of dollars the way that we're doing, why not just pay off the debt? The entire student loan debt, or pay other things. I mean, they're just giving money away for free to everyone. They're giving it to countries for stupid programs. They're giving it to the banks. They're giving it to the airlines. They're giving it to everybody. I mean, might as well just go ahead and pay off that debt for the American people. Of course, they're only going to do very little for the American people. But the point is that at this point, with everything that's going on, would we really be surprised if the inflation hits so high that that we hit hyperinflation like Venezuela or Zimbabwe? I don't think so. All right, so the article that I have for you is also from Zero Hedge, and it says, Iran and China signed massive 25-year deal, $400 billion Chinese infrastructure investment for oil. Increasingly, it appears that so-called rogue states and those under Washington's wrath and sanctions are coming together to combat U.S. dominance across the globe. It was a process already set in motion after years of aggressive U.S. attempts to enforce a ban on Iranian and Venezuelan oil as prime example. For starters, China and Russia have been major players in helping to circumvent U.S. attempts to blockade Venezuela and Iranian oil. So, that just enforces what I said a minute ago, that all these countries are now coming together, pretty much flipping off the United States and say, we don't need you. We don't need the U.S. dollar. We can create a system where we can help each other out without having to worry about your sanctions. And even if you try to do a blockade, we have Russia and China, the two top dogs around the world, who will help us out. And then this alliance is going to be really important for the future, because if you remember, last year I did the report on how Russia and China will help Iran build their military to the likes of like they are, to the same level, to the same degree, which is going to be very, very important, because now instead of being 3 superpowers around the world, it could be 4, including Iran. And that would be 3 against 1. And, that would potentially be an even more stressful time for the U.S., and for, the citizens of the U.S. Now, what's important about this deal is that China is giving them $400 billion over 25 years. Okay? In return, China is going to get a steady stream of oil, and that is the way that I believe that the Chinese people just back their yuan with oil. Okay, but let's do the math. $1 US in Iran is 42,105 Iranian rial. If you do 42,105 times 400 billion, that comes out to be 16,842 trillion Iranian rial. So, of course, for the Iranian people, that is a massive amount of money, and for them was a heck yeah. That's why I do believe that they jumped on that deal real fast, because if they're gonna get $400 billion over the next 25 years just for oil, which is something that they have in abundance, then they're gonna go ahead and do that, because in the next 25 years they're gonna get over 14 quadrillion of their Iranian dollar. All right, so that's a lot of money, and that is going to help their economy, is going to help their people, and they're going to be able to buy all the expensive toys like the United States has. And, they're going to be able to buy it from Russia or China. So if you break it down, they will get $16 billion a year for 25 years, and for them, that's 100,000 million billion, 673 trillion, 680 billion Iranian rial. All right, but really, what I wonder is what people in America are saying, because our political leaders are the ones who are going to make this tougher than it has to be. So I have a video for you. This is Lieutenant Colonel James Garafano, and he's talking about this deal between China and Iran. But pay close attention, because it's pretty hypocritical. All right, here it is.
Joining me now is retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel James Carafano. Colonel, it's great to see you. Your reaction to China making a big push into the Mideast with a new 25-year deal with China and Iran, $400 billion. China's going to invest in Iran in exchange for a steady stream of oil. What do you say to this?
Yeah, well, first of all, let's see if it's a real deal. I mean, the Belt and Road was basically paved with press releases. I mean, half that stuff was just never got past the press release stage. I mean, they're going to throw hundreds of billions of dollars into Iran. I mean, they might as well just give their money away. Or they should go to FanDuel and bet it all on a team that lost in the Sweet 16 and say they're going to win the Final Four. I don't think the Chinese are that stupid. I think this is just a lot of posturing.
So you don't think that this will come to fruition, that China will even put money into Iran in exchange for oil at all? You think it's not going to happen?
Well, I think if they're idiots, I mean, they'll probably buy Iranian oil, but look, they're not going to invest hundreds. I mean, they'd be idiots to invest hundreds of billions of dollars in this country. Similar with this, we're going to broker a deal between the Palestinians and the Israelis. They have nothing to bring to the table. They're just posturing. I think they're just poking Biden. But, here's something the Chinese need to think about. They're committing a genocide against 1 million Muslim people. And now they say they're going to go poke their nose around the Middle East and put up flags everywhere. How quick do you think it's going to be before they attract the attention of every Islamist extremist in the region, and they become the target du jour. I think the more they meddle in the Middle East, the more they're going to regret this.
That's interesting what you just said, because there's talk that China wants to now work with Turkey, with Pakistan, also Iran. So, but the Uyghurs, as you point out, they're subject to genocide inside China, and so with the equivalent of concentration camps. Do you see any indication that the Muslim world in the Middle East is taking note of that?
Well, look, I think the governments can find all kinds of excuses not to deal with this because, they want to make money and maybe they'll look the other way. But, the likes of ISIS, they're not going to do that. Matter of fact, they're going to see this as, potentially as the new great Satan. This will be a new opportunity for them to rally against the governments, which they hate anyway, and say, look, they're murdering Muslims in China, and these governments are embracing them. I don't think the Chinese are going to do any of this because they're not that stupid. But if they are, they're going to waste a lot of money. They're going to accomplish a lot of nothing, and they're going to probably, draw a bullseye from Al Qaeda and ISIS.
Interesting. Colonel James Carafano, it's good to see you, and thanks for your service to our country. It's good to have you on.
All right, well, you just heard what he said, and it sounds very hypocritical because that's exactly how the American people has felt about the war that we have been fighting them for over 20 years, or about 20 years now. The point is that sounded so hypocritical, and that's exactly what we have been saying. We're over there in the Middle East. We're sticking our noses where it doesn't belong. We're investing a lot of money, putting infrastructure into all those countries, supposedly for democracy, but we're also taking their oil. China is not gonna. The only difference between what we're doing and what China is doing is that probably they're not gonna bomb the crap out of everybody over there. So that's exactly what I'm saying. If Russia and China do team up and they do build up Iran, that's going to make a lot of problems for everyone. And actually, that would take the pressure away from China and Russia that's giving them from the United States into Iran. The United States would focus to Iran. The main reason being is because Israel and Iran do not get along. And if Iran gets boldened to the point where they have new equipment, more advanced equipment than Israel, they get a nuke, which, people have said that they actually do own, then a war between Iran and Israel is gonna come eventually. And, before Iran gets to the point where they're really strong, Israel would have had to, had already declared war and fight against them or whatever and drag the United States in it. But now that China and Iran have made this deal, it's not going to be very easy because now Israel would have to fight not only Iran, but also China. And if China gets involved, more than likely Russia will too. So, of course, it's going to drag the United States into it. And since the United States is a NATO member and it gets attacked, then the articles that would, force the entire NATO nations to come to its aid, then that's how you have another world war. So all of this, we have several things that can happen all at once. Ukraine and Russia, Iran and China, or actually Iran and Israel, and then Taiwan and China. So we have three major things that can happen that will bring potential war. Which one of those three will we fight? Where are we going to stick our noses in? Can we really be stretched that thin and have a successful fight? Because more than likely we're not. And more than likely nukes are going to fly everywhere. So that is the reason why we have to prepare. Especially if this is going to happen in the next several months. Because, this can drag into it. This can drag all those nations into what's happening in Ukraine in the next several weeks. And, from the articles that I read to you, it was saying in there that people in governments, in high places, they believe in that probably in the next few days, this conflict between Ukraine and Russia can explode. So that's the reason why we have to prepare now. I have this from True News, and it's a little segment. Let me pull it up. I have this from True News. There's a little segment where it shows that Iran has or excuse me, China has put 5,000 Chinese soldiers there, and they're going to be helping Iran, or they're going to be patrolling for Iran. So again, if Israel attacks, they're going to be attacking China as well. All right, I'm going to play you a small clip. Here it is.
I was shocked when you guys shared with me today that there were 5,000 Chinese troops that are now going to be stationed in Iran. This is a big move.
This is huge. Edward, you found the story. Where did you find this?
So this was actually published by Memory. Now, Memory is an outlet that translates reports out of Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, and other Arabic countries. They actually took this from the Pakistani daily newspaper, Roznama Amat. Now, the title of this article that they were able to translate was "More Deployment of 5,000 Chinese troops in Iran is part of the agreement." Now, what they were discussing in this article was the Chinese had just secured a 25-year plan, a $400 billion agreement with Iran.
So this is the agreement we talked about a week or two ago.
They have the details. And in this plan is a 5,000 troop deployment at a minimum. This is the first iteration for China to have a security, basically, presence in the region to make sure that the agreement can be followed through on.
How many bases would you estimate China would need for 5,000 men?
I would say at least 3. The article says 1, but you're going to need a logistics base. You're going to potentially need an airfield, or to use an Iranian army base for that. And you're going to need somewhere to house them. One base for 5,000 soldiers is going to be an enormous base. That's not just a small outlet. We're talking about a base the size of Ramstein.
And they're not going to put them all in one location.
No, that would be stupid, strategically dumb to place the entire unit in one spot. I think what we're seeing is the first deployment of many for the Chinese.
Did the Pakistani newspaper indicate when the Chinese bases will be constructed and when troops are expected to be deployed to Iran?
They didn't give an exact date, but they said that the move has started, as in troops have been sent, forward troops, to look for locations and to start the process of actually setting up the base.
So PLA troops are already moving around in Iran, scouting for the base locations.
Yes, and that was based on the signature. The second the deal was inked between Iran and China, the deployment began.
The Middle East just changed.
Yes. Now
The balance of power just changed.
Now you've got China involved. They've already been negotiating, business deals with Saudi Arabia and several other players in the Middle East. Of course, they're in the port of Haifa. And so, if I was advising China, I'd tell them to do this. To tell them to do that. Am I in support of it? No, but if I was advising, this is a smart move. It fits into their philosophy of the One Belt, One Road initiative that they're implementing. The Middle East is going to be the hub of that global transportation system.
Well, Israel just got their wings clipped. They can no longer bomb Iran and not start a world war.
China is going to play the same role that Russia's played in Syria, in the sense that every time now Israel wants to launch an air mission or do some kind of invasion, even the United States had to take note of this, you have to deal with the S-400 or S-500 air defense systems that the Russians brought with them. The Chinese will undoubtedly bring, in addition to this military contingent, the apparatus to protect them, which includes air defense systems, potentially even fighter escorts.
All right, so now that it looks like China is going to be in the Middle East, they are going to have soldiers within Iran, and they're going to be advising the Iranian government and their soldiers, and they're going to be training them, and they're going to be pretty much doing what the United States does on a regular basis. Now, the window of opportunity for Israel to try to come up with some type of attack against Iran is not going to work anymore. All right, because if the Chinese soldiers get hurt, then that's going to force China to declare war on whoever it is that attacked their soldiers. Okay, so all of this development is what is really making China more aggressive. They're making them more bold. They're seeing that they're becoming stronger, and they have this testosterone rush to where they're feeling indestructible. They're feeling bulletproof, and now they're pretty much telling everybody that they're the ones that are going to be controlling the world pretty soon. Now, I have another video which is pretty small, but I just want you to pay attention on how this Chinese official is talking and how much bolder they're feeling and much more confident they're feeling. All right, here it is.
Based on the merits and the evolution of the Iranian nuclear issue, relevant parties need to move in the same direction with concrete actions and discuss and formulate the roadmap and time frame for the United States and Iran to resume compliance with the JCPOA. The pressing task is for the United States to take substantive measures to lift its unilateral sanctions on Iran and long-arm jurisdiction on third parties, and for Iran to resume reciprocal compliance with its nuclear commitments in an effort to achieve early success. At the same time, the international community should support efforts by regional countries in establishing a Middle East zone free of nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction.
All right, so listen to these headlines now, okay? Because, again, it's showing how much bolder China is becoming. This one is from AP News, and it says, China sanctions U.S. Canadian officials over Xinjiang. The next one is from Zero Hedge. Blinken blasts baseless China sanctions on U.S. as ploy to intimidate and silence. And then the next one is an article that I'm going to be reading to you because, again, the timeline for war has been reduced. The timeline for war seems to be a lot closer than a lot of people believe. Okay? This one is from Zero Hedge, and it says, Beijing accelerating timeline for possible invasion of Taiwan, experts warn. John Mills, the former director of cybersecurity policy, strategy, and international affairs at the Office of the Secretary of Defense, told the Epoch Times he believes that an invasion could come in the next 3 years, much earlier than the 6-year estimate given by U.S. Admiral Philip Davidson, head of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, during a congressional hearing in early March. Okay, so we have China making this big deal, which they know now that they're going to have a steady stream of oil and nothing's going to stop it. They're going to put their soldiers in Iran to make sure that that the oil actually does come and there's no interruptions or no accidents happening that nobody can explain. There are pretty much telling the U.S. that now that the Biden administration is there, that they don't really care what they say, and they're going to establish sanctions just as much as the United States is giving them sanctions, which, in the long run, I do believe that it would make a lot more damage for China to do sanctions to the United States than at this point the United States do any type of sanctions on China. And now with Taiwan, they're accelerating the timeline where they could get into a war, trying to take over the island of Taiwan. And that would be something that the United States would more than likely take advantage of, right? Because the next and the final headline that I have for you tonight kind of gives the NATO alliance the excuse they need in order for them to have some type of conflict or, some type of action, because they haven't had any probably since they were ever created. All right, so this one is from strategicculture.org, and it says, Stoltenberg comes clean on China opportunity for NATO. Forget about China or Russia being an alleged threat. They are in actual fact an opportunity for NATO and U.S. imperialism. In an unguarded moment, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg let the cat out of the bag when he described the rise of China as both a challenge and an opportunity. What he was admitting unintentionally is that a confrontational policy towards China gives the military alliance some badly needed new purpose. In his interview with Deutsche Welle this week, Stoltenberg commented on the rise of China. He said, inferring something menacing, China is coming closer to us, investing on our critical infrastructure, Stoltenberg went on. There's no way we can avoid addressing the security consequences for our regional alliance of the rise of China and the shift in the global balance of power. All right, so with everything that's going on, okay, it kind of seems like the West might be feeding China their ego boost, or they might be giving them more confidence than they should really have, because it looks like NATO wants some type of action. They have not probably gotten any type of action ever since they were created. So now they're seeing the opportunity and they want to take it because they know in the next 3 years they're going to have some type of conflict. So if these exercises, which they are doing, which are focused on China, as the beginning of this podcast started with a video from the beginning of this podcast started with, we are now creating the type of exercises that is going to be aimed directly at China. So that is the reason why we have to pay attention to all of this, and we have to prepare. Now, I have done, on the first video, I went into great detail on the preparedness. And I'm not going to do it on this second video, because I really do encourage you to go back and listen to the first one, because you're going to get a lot of information on there about the preparedness and everything that you need to do, all the categories you have to take care of, and the proper way to prepare, which is exactly what this podcast is for. Now, I would really appreciate if you can share this information with your friends and family all throughout your social media, so everybody can get this information, know exactly what's going on, and how to prepare for it. Which, of course, is the most important thing for it, because what's the purpose of knowing all this information? We're not going to do anything about it. All right, that is my reasoning, the way that I think. There's no point on wasting all this time and getting word over things that we cannot control if we're not going to do anything about it. All right, so preparedness gives us that cutting edge where we can take matter into our own hands, and it doesn't matter what happens. You know, we tried our best, and maybe the fact that we prepare however little it is, or however much it is going to make a difference in your community. You know, whether it's a small impact or a big impact, the fact that you did something about it is going to really be better off for everyone else around you, because we can take the steps of preparedness and we can teach it to other people, especially if crap has already hit the fan. It's going to be too late for people to prepare, right? But they can know the basics that is going to allow them to be able to live in a time where there would be no food supply chain, all right, where there would be uncertainty, where they would not know what to do. Preppers would come into in that place and be the leaders of those communities. All right, they could even be advisors to the governors and the sheriffs and everybody else. So that is the reason why we have to make sure that we do this type of prepping, that we know exactly what's going on, we prepare accordingly for it, and we also prepare for people who did not prepare for it, all right? Because there's going to be a lot of panic in those days, but if you can be the voice of reason and you can calm people down by showing them the way, then that is going to be better off for everybody else, all right? So I want to leave you with that. Please share this information with your friends and family. Please subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, like the video on whatever social media that it is you're using this through, and also post it on your social media, you know, on your Facebook, on your Instagram, whatever it is. And I would really appreciate it. Also, please visit the MemeandSurvivalStore.com. You can go to www.MemeandSurvivalStore.com, and you can also, not only can you find everything that you need for your preparedness on there, but you can also find the book that I'm giving away for free. All we need your help is with shipping on that book. The book retails for $24.99. The shipping is $9.99, so you are in fact getting it for free. So I would really appreciate if you can go on there, get it, and distribute it to your friends and family, so they can also get the information that's in that book, and they can prepare for the scenarios that I put on there. All right. So again, my name is Jose Prado, and remember, always ready.
The Man-Made Survival Show.